Well, hi there, it's Paulie here for a tea talk. Tragically without tea because, bafflingly, this cafe is closed. But anyway, so some viewers had asked me about the evolution of miniatures games, miniatures war games. So we will look at sea and air ones. Let's look at land ones first because, there is its core. So look, for this we've got to reel way back. So the very first real sort of miniatures games was actually Kriegspiele, which was developed essentially by the Prussian staff as a way of simulating battles. It was all done through statistics, very well-intentioned statistics that later showed themselves to be total bollocks. But the idea was they had their statistics which showed how fast men would move in different terrains under different conditions, how quickly they would deploy from different formations, how quickly they tended to recover from different forms of chaos, and statistically how much damage they would tend to put out and tend to take. No reference in here to new technologies. Everything is built on wishful thinking. But what you could then do is have a huge war game where you had two rooms with identical maps, and each room has the staff of people for that side that are playing. So you're running off limited information, and there's actually an overall umpire. It's probably why I keep calling people who run games umpires, and they will have a staff of people. That team are the only ones that have the full information of where everyone is and what's going on. They release information to both teams in their separate rooms as the armies advance, as things are done. So the people in a room can issue movement orders and so on to troops. They write these orders out. The umpires then adjudicate how long these orders are going to take to arrive at the target unit, given the distance and where they're going to. And if they encounter things, how long reports will take to come back, given the distance to the general. So keeping your guys in like a tight chain of communication is obviously important, but you can send out scouting groups. And as groups encounter each other, combat is adjudicated according to this statistical system. And as armies take a set amount of damage, they begin to start losing options, lose coherence, and the umpires will declare one side a winner. Now, this proved to be a bit of a winner of an idea. It spread to other nations, and it very quickly broke away from being a military tool. It became a thing that you could actually do a Kriegspiel. You could actually sign up and do one of these games. And the problem was, the problem was they required a staff and considerable setup. You're going to need separate rooms, for both teams, and you're going to need somewhere for the master maps and so on for the umpires. The umpires are probably going to need 2 or 3 assistants to make it run. This is a big deal. But it was popular. But because it's in many ways more of an art form than anything else, the rules are sort of how you apply the statistics, and lots of personal interpretations made by the umpires. Some umpires got personal reputations for being, good, fair, martinets, etc. So this has caught on as a pastime, but here comes H.G. Wells. So H.G. Wells decided to do his floor games classic, Little Wars. And this was essentially taking kids playing with toy soldiers and expanding it forward to adults. Very pleased to say that games like A Gentleman's War and so on still keep this kind of beautiful toy soldiers geist. I digress. Now, this ushered in an interesting period where many battle games were done as personal skills rather than anything done statistically or with randomizers like dice or cards. So the core of the original Little Wars game is spring-loaded cannon firing little wooden dowels at people. Oh, by the way, if no one's ever seen it, where? Oh, hang on. That is a Willy Wagtail. Whee! Having a fit because I'm in its territory. So, you fired the spring-loaded cannon. If they struck miniatures, then those miniatures are off. So the cannons fire mightily across the game, and you're actually crouched down on the floor sighting these things and firing. Right. Personal skills come in. If army battles get to within like small arms or indeed engage in melee, there isn't really a randomizer. It's done, again, going back to this more statistical style, where, all right, well, for whoever's attacking, for each number of figures attacking, you will take this many figures off the other side. The defenders will take this many off you. You can actually they're completely predictable. So the only random element is firing the cannon. And this caught on as a pastime and remained sort of a sweet pastime, good Lord, for the next 70 years. You'll see this personal skill style of gaming go over into the next most popular game style, which is naval games. Again, there were naval-style Kriegspiele done, and later, far later, you get things like Fletcher Pratt's naval game, which again comes entirely off personal skills. Estimating ranges, by raw eye, basically. You're just taking a look, figuring out how far the ships are, writing down those ranges, and that's where your shells range. So again, emphasis on personal skills was seen as the thing, not randomizers. That's mere chance. That's gambling. That's just, there's no tactics to it. So, right. It stays just basically, up a vague pastime until post-World War II, that is. There is considerable interest starting to come in history and archaeology, and it begins to expand into a very enthusiastic interest in military history. There's a lot of people who've got real military experience who were, what should we say, gamely inclined, who began to look at doing war games rules that would reflect their experience. So if you look at a lot of the early games designers, you'll find that a lot of them have been serving soldiers in World War II. A lot of the things you start coming out in the 60s, they are starting to look at taking that next step. Let's bring in randomizers to try and put a random element in the games. This kind of is where we're going to get our fog of war. We don't want those two rooms. We want everything on one table. We don't want personal skill because, some of these guys are old, some of these guys are injured. It's not supposed to be about personal skills. We're going simulationist. We want to simulate the battle. So we've gone from gamist, where ideally a skilled player who's a great shot with spring-loaded cannon or whatever can, reap the field. No, now we're going to simulationist. We're trying to simulate an actual ancient battle. Aha. So Tony Barth and various other people start doing particularly Ancients rules. Ancients and Napoleonics are the big Kickstarters that everybody leaps into. If you look at these games, what you tend to get is, again, it's a little bit like that Little Wars idea. A set number of figures of a set type in a situation will give you dice that can be rolled for effect. It's a very, very common mechanism you'll see. So they will divide, say, an Ancients troops into class. They'll say these guys are heavy infantry. They're well protected. Whatever. These guys are kind of medium infantry. They're just more barbaric guys that just maybe got a helmet and a shield, or maybe not even the helmet. So they say for a set number of these figures, you're going to roll this number of dice, but everything is done exactly in many ways like it is in Little Wars, where individual figures are removed from formations as casualties. So therefore, everything tends to be quite large figures, individually based. They've also got very limited choice of models, so they're very, very, very skilled at taking what few models there were and converting them into other things. And the scholarship on ancient military history and Napoleonics is only really wackily enough sort of in its infancy. It really kicks off due to these guys. as you start to get, you know, actual societies of war games and so on coming together and researching more deeply. So you get systems that use numbers of figures, rolling dice, 6-sided dice because they're readily available, giving you actual casualties on the table. So it's kind of a blend between a randomized system and that statistical system. You can still have a look at it and see, oh, a set number of guys are probably going to have this effect, but the plussing or minusing, but putting the right type of guys in the right place is going to help. And there were melee rules and morale rules so that you would start making checks. A very popular thing for some reason was a morale check to see if your troops will charge home. Do some dice, give these guys a classification for, you know, what their morale is. You know, you've got to make some sort of score. Making morale checks to receive a charge without running away. These sorts of things were very common. Now, after a lot of playing in the UK, some very talented people begin to get in. Now, coming to the fore were a little group that became the Wargames Research Group. Now, their first set of rules, it borrows from and develops from common rule sets, and when you read Phil Barker's writings on the matter, yes, they played lots of each other's rules. Everyone had little house rules. Everyone was enjoying it, but they decided, let's do something a bit different. Statistically randomized games. Let's try and be scientific about it and use the randomizers. So what they do is, it's still individual figures are going to be removed from units as casualties. So you still have to have some single bases there. You can have some based in groups because you can make change. Ching! If you've got 4 guys on a base and they lose 1 guy, all right, remove the 4 and put a 3 in. Ching! Or give them 2 2s and a 1, or yeah, whatever. But in come the statistical charts. So what they do is they decide to do something where you'll have a cross-reference chart that shows if I have figures that are fighting a troop type, I can cross-index what troop type I am versus what troop type the other guys, and that will give me a factor. And that factor will be the casualties that I inflict. There is a random factor that they put in, but it's not much. It's plus or minus a bit. And it can make a difference. But in general, you can kind of see, yeah, these guys fighting these guys will do these sorts of casualties. What they've decided is that each figure represents a set number of men. So represents 20 men. So the numbers that you're getting from these charts are actual individual men dead. So if you've got 15, that means 15 guys are dead. Whenever that clicks over to 20, a figure is removed. So they're trying to get as simulationist as they feel they can. We're simulating actual dead. How many people died in this battle? 291 people died in this battle. They keep their morale checks, and they keep their morale checks for charging home and receiving charges. These sorts of things are in there. Quite complex points values, so you can pick armies, and that becomes a real thing because as these come in, there's a sudden kind of shift where suddenly people are actually playing tournaments with each other and they want tighter rules. So again, it's moving away from being an interpretive thing with good umpires and house rules. Now you've got something where someone from one area can play someone in another area with the same rules. It does, however, bring in a tournament mentality, which I despise because it brings a lot of contention into gaming and it brings a lot of systemization into things that should really just be, hey, we're all having fun together. But anyway, so this remains a real style. If you go and look at, say, American Civil War rules, early Napoleonic rules, sword and musket, tricorn period sort of rules are also very popular in the 60s. They do tend to be that style with a set number of figures will roll dice for effect. But that style of being way more simulationist comes in the late 60s and continues onwards. So you'll see in things like the air-fixed Napoleonic rules, which are very popular, you will see that statistic thing where we're now getting quite charts which have fire factors, which we're cross-indexing to give us effects and so on. We're trying to be as scientific as possible. Charts are the way. The simpler, in many ways, kind of merrier system of your rolling for effect, you will see that keep on going. TSR's miniatures rules, which I actually really liked, I enjoyed them back in the day. The English Civil War ones were a hoot, even if they did have halberdiers in as a troop type. They were quite, laissez-faire fun. Again, set number of figures, gets you some rolls. And they had taken something from the playbook of these other game systems by having different troop types on different types of base width, so you could pack more guys who are like close order, like pikemen, into an area than more loose fighting style guys like ancient Britons and so on. So you're getting more guys packed in. All right, so and this remains a real theme, particularly in ancients, not so much in things like obviously Napoleonics or American Civil War or what have you. But so these two styles do remain contiguously. You will see that more laissez-faire, guys rolling dice for effect continues through the 80s, Warhammer, and takes it to a ridiculous extreme because they essentially don't have a set number of troops give you a dice. Everyone in contact gives you a dice, so you're rolling a bucket load of smaking dice all over the table. And the other side, given what their quality, what their protection is, then roll saving rolls against them. And so you're rolling to attack, you're rolling to defend, you're rolling for effect. Massive rolls going back and forth. A very slow and awkward system, I have to say. I have no idea why it's remained popular, but it is simple and, in theory, fun. Though I have to say, if you ever go to a games club, if there are people arguing violently at tables over like some rules point, it's going to be the Warhammer guys. But anyway, this simulationist style remains the thing. There are many different rule systems come in over the 70s and 80s. You'll see things like shock of impact rules for ancients and lots of people doing their own thing. And there are lots of very interesting ideas. Some of them try randomized movement systems, so it's less predictable how far your guys will go, trying to move away from the statistics. Some have hybridized sort of chart systems, and they're struggling, but it does always remain pretty much individual miniatures being removed from the table to track casualties. There are lots of beautiful, splendid Napoleonic rules come out. And again, a lot of these get very, very, very rules heavy because every single regiment will have its own particular melee ratings, its own particular morale. So, masses and masses of minuarte to go through. Lots of things for power players to sift through. However, 90s we get a sudden interesting shift, both in things like Napoleonics and in things like Ancients. So, Ancients. WIG has a brainstorm. Let's not remove individual figures. Now, a lot of this simulationist stuff had come down to equipment. My guys have short spears and shields. These guys have long spears and shields. These guys have two-handed axe, no shield, but they've got metal body armor. These are all giving you different factors and so on in play. They said, what if we just have a base which has a number of miniatures on it and it reflects a group of people who fight in a specific style? These guys are skirmishers. These guys are, we're going to call these auxiliaries, guys that can kind of fight in a more skirmishy style but are willing to, not quite as fleet of foot as actual skirmishers, but they can go through rough terrain, but they're willing to fight shoulder to shoulder when they need to. Heavy infantry of different types. Let's say there's long spear, quite good at defending, quite good at grinding forward. Blade, like Roman infantry, great in sort of shock attacks against infantry, bit vulnerable to cavalry. Pike, ponderous but kind of a moving wall, hard to deal with, but vulnerable from the flanks. These bases reflect a fighting style, and in DBA they did a very simple system, which I've reviewed, where it's almost a bit of rock, scissors and papery. Different troop base types are vulnerable under different conditions to others. So you have to decide which ones you're putting where and how you're facing things down. Very good. They roll this over into a larger version called DBM. Morale doesn't really exist as a concept anymore. Usually a quiet street. Morale as a concept doesn't really seem to exist anymore as a thing that you roll for. You're just told when your army takes a set number of casualties, you've lost the game. Any sort of morale is kind of just vaguely factored into the troop type. You can sometimes tag things as, it might be inferior or superior because it's got great morale. Napoleonics, great little thing comes out called Napoleon's Battles. I love it. I've actually got Dave Arneson's set of those rules given to me. But this system did some truly great things where it removed the top-heavy simulationism. Different nations' troops are in there with different kind of factors and so on. But what was quite important in this were things like the ability to change formations, the ability to, say, form square against cavalry, and so on. Abstract as discipline roles, which will also affect your morale. That's your level of training. They're not removing individual figures anymore either. Your groups are really brigades and so on. You've got solid blocks of troops. We're not whittling down individual figures. So it's done a similar shift. And has had some very interesting ideas on sort of playability and let's make this playability. So we've moved from what I kind of call gamerism, where it's individual skills in physical skills and so on, and this is the thing that you can win through physical skills, to simulationist. We're moving forward to mighty simulation, and now we're getting into another style again. We're still simulating, but we are making sure that the game is in the game. We're starting to look at ways of losing some of the flash, I think. The things you don't need to simulate in minuscule detail and think of what's the effect. So some higher level thinking going on. And this has sort of kind of ushered in the current age of miniatures. So at the moment, apart from things like Warhammer and skirmish games and so on, it is very rare to find a game that will remove individual figures from units as casualties. That's fussy. It's hard to move things around. That is a rare set of rules that do that. It is now fairly rare to see rules that focus so much on simulation that they forget the game. I think the main culprit for that is still ancients for some reason. A particular mindset goes with it. You'd think Napoleonics, wouldn't you? But no. Mortem et Gloriam and so on, very fussy system to use. It's using these big elements, no individual figure loss, but in their case, their command and control and morale systems are incredibly simulationist and will grind up most of your time playing the game. People are enjoying it, but people are moving to other systems, and these systems keep evolving where people are trying to find that balance. World War II games, by the way, followed the same thing, individual figures, and then nowadays you tend to get way more games where, yes, you still get things where you've got, say, things like bolt action, where a model tank on the field is a model tank, each individual is a guy. It's a skirmish game. So those are still going strong because skirmish games are cheap to play and colourful to look at. However, for sort of higher level games, we are seeing again things where a base is going to be a platoon or a squad or a company, a tank model on the battlefield. More commonly tends to represent like a troop of tanks. So, and trying to keep this tail of the game played by the dice that roll on the table. And that's the thing, I think, that makes a modern game stand out from a 70s an 80s and early 90s game. The charts and tables in general now have gone. People want to be able to do something where we're rolling dice on the table, we're not having to cross-reference charts and tables, because sometimes you have to cross-reference a chart with a chart. Back in the 80s. No. We want to be able to get results through simple-to-learn systems, and that does give you faster play. You haven't got these cheat sheets flitting back and forth. The tale of the game's told there on the table. Again, it's a much easier play style. Even things like say, Mortem et Gloriam, I think, is an easier game to play than some of the Wargame Search Group stuff at its height of sort of niggling detail. So, kind of what's the tale there? Well, as you see, it went from essentially a intellectual, statistical exercise into essentially a play exercise where people are crawling around having fun, individual skills firing things, moving to someone trying to put a little bit more science and logic into the process, then the science and logic taking over to an extreme degree where it's trying to simulate as deeply as possible the battle experience, and playability and fun is definitely second seat to simulation. An evolution to make the simulationist end of this more simple, so it's not getting in the way of the fun. And the thing I'm seeing now is a couple of generations now of game designers are able to look at where is the game in the game. So what you're getting now is trying to balance the simulationism with the fun of the game experience, and the fun of the game experience is now to the fore. People realise for the fun of that, it really can't be someone firing little cannons, because, we have to make sure everyone can play on an even field. You might have, people whose vision is bad, etc. We can simulate, certainly, and it should give the feel of the battle, but it should be fun forward. Some of the best miniatures designers, I love Sam Mustafa's stuff. He does a really good job. Check out his Honor Games website. I've reviewed some of his stuff. He has a game called Blucher, which is a Napoleonics game, which is excellent. He has an Ancients game, which is excellent. He has a naval game, excellent. These are very much things done by a highly skilled military historian, but take a look. The fun comes first. He knows what he's doing. The simulation is in there, but he knew what to whittle back. And I think that is the modern age, because we have computer games that can keep track of all that simulationism now. If you want nothing but raw simulationism, if you want air rules where we're tracking potential energy versus actual energy versus energy, we've got a computer that can simulate that. So for the tabletop, what we want is something more visceral, more fun, more engaging. A miniatures game is a fun experience, and it remains so because there's models on the tabletop which we've had the fun of making. So it's a craft exercise. There's terrain on the table which makes it interactively panoramic. So it's sort of involving. It is an art exercise that you've made, not like a computer game which has been entirely handed to you by a third party. It's still a visceral and involving experience, and there's a face-to-face interaction with the other player. You're having fun, ideally now with rules that are putting the fun to the fore of the design experience. So I think miniatures are actually going to continue onwards. It's not going to be wiped out by computer games. People are playing more of these than ever. 3D printing technology means that there's just this amazing plethora of different miniatures that you can make. So the sky's the limit. I think miniature gaming is going to be with us, till the end of time. But it's there, not because these early designers had any of this wrong. They were looking at ways of doing a very difficult task, and they were doing it in ways that people enjoyed so much that this kept alive for all these decades, with people working on different ways of approaching this. So none of these old games were wrong, and they are all playable, which is something I keep coming back to on this channel. They're playable and they're really fun in their own way. I do like where miniatures games have been going lately. There's some good work being done by some clever people, and there's some really great designers engaged in the field. Take a look at their work. Stay looking on the channel. Even if you're not a miniatures gamer, having a look at some of the things that I review here is a great look at the way people are approaching games design. And if you are planning on being a game designer, take a look at the way people choose to design what they design, what choices they made, what things they brought to the fore, what systems that they used to make this game live. So anyway, that's a little tea talk on miniatures. We can look at other styles later on, but until then, thanks for watching and everything. Hey, I'll do tea next time. Please do, if you like the video, please do like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Consider finding me on Patreon. I'm getting a lot of stuff sort of out at the moment. I will be doing a lot of miniatures games with new publishers. So yeah, sky's the limit. So cheers everyone, and I will see you later on. Bye.